right, now what we're going to talk about a minute here, we're doing this on a mag die. And a mag die is simply a die cylinder that's inserted with magnetics. What the magnetics do is they hold a flexible die plate down. And it's flexible die plate just because of what it says. It's flexible and bends. Most common use for mag dies is in your laser sheet products. We use it here for a training tool. It works for many products. One of the knocks you used to hear is these dies wore out pretty quick. They probably wear out quicker than a normal die, but really these days they last a pretty good while, and I think it's something you'll have success with. It definitely saves you a little bit of money. But to mount this, it's real simple. We have a score right in the middle, right there. And all I want to do is take my register marks and lay it on that score and mount it just like a plate and wrap it around. When you're doing laser sheets, you'd probably mount it in the press a lot more. You can mount it multiple ways. I'm going to do it this way just so y'all can see it real well. I'm going to mount it in the center of the die, and then we're going to set up the press to what this has done. All I want to do is I want to center it up. And make sure you got it right before you start, and it'll be just no problem. Roll it around. Make sure it lines up. I think it needs to line up a little bit closer, personally. You know our motto is close don't count. All right. That's just a little bit. I need it dead on. All right, and then when you get it, you'll see your lines matching up just like on your plates. One thing you want to be sure, if you're getting a mag die and you have the lift screws drilled in it, your mag die can't fall over that. So I recommend that you don't get the lift screws unless you absolutely have to. It has caused us problems in the past where we had a die fall over that, so keep that in mind. But once I get that mounted now, I'll treat it exactly like a normal die. All right, we're going to load this die just like any other die. A couple of things we got to do. We're going to put our die washers on. They're used to eat up the slack, also to center my die. The most important thing is that my die gear runs dead on top of my drive gear on the press. I need to center that up. I've got a square block and a twist block. Our blocks have oil holes. The oil holes should always be facing up. You need to oil your die once every 10,000 feet minimum. Make sure you keep this die cool. You'll also use your felt washers on the die. Make sure they stay oiled. Make sure you take care of the die. One of the things I do is I don't wear rings. They can damage the blades. They can hurt yourself in the press. Another thing is I make sure that when I'm holding the die in any way, I'm putting direct pressure, not moving pressure. If I take my hand and slide, I'm going to cut myself. Now, y'all keep that in mind because that's going to happen to you. So what I want to do now, just as a pressman, I'm just going to simply put my hand under here. I'm going to release this. Now, because I run this press all the time, I know automatically that 4 of these plastic washers is going to center this die dead on to the center of my press. Now I put me a little oil on there, and I put my square block on first. Now, once I've done this, I'm ready to load the die into the press. Now, I can do this with a crane, but this is a light enough, easy die. What I want to do is when I come over the press, I want to have my hands so that I can control the block and that I don't ding that die by hitting this edge. If my hand's where it is now, I can't damage that die. Bing, I'm going to hurt my hand, but I can't damage that die. Most owners prefer you take care of the die. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply lift the die in, and I'm going to set it over. Make sure my block's square and my oil hole's up. Now I want to just let it slide in place. I want to make sure I don't drop it, and I want to make sure it's snug over there. Once I've done this, and a key thing to this is hit that emergency stop, and you ain't got nothing to worry about. But once I've done this, I want to make sure that my gears line dead up, and they do, and you see them from either angle. Now I can just push a felt washer in place. That'll run fine there, and I'm ready to put the slack up on my other side. This is done with a twist block. All right, I'm going to put my washers on. Now I want to slide this over. Twist my block with my oil hole up. Now I got to make sure my die is tight. If it moves at all, a little bit, you need to put in another washer. They got thinner fiber washers, the plastic washers. There can be no slack, so whatever. Now I have no slack in. I have my felts in place. I'm comfortable that the die is set. I'm ready to put down my bearing rollers that hold my pressure and my pressure gauges on top. All right, I'm going to put my bearing blocks on first. What this does is it pushes direct pressure from your bearings here to the bearers of the die, and that's all that the pressure's pushed on. Key thing is you can put this on this press in backwards. If I put it like this, then I could damage the die or something. Make sure when you put it in, your bearers are lined up on your bearers here. Just simply drops in, look at it, they're lined up, I'm good to go. Next thing I want to put on is a pressure bridge. This just simply slides on. I always just thumb tight and loosen these. Your back ones you should never have to touch. Thumb tight that down, and then I want to screw these down without putting pressure on them. Just want to make contact. Okay. Now then, without putting pressure on them, I'm fine. What I've got now is I've got my die in. I've got everything set up for my die. So now I need to look at my stock. And if you can see, my stock's not centered to the die. So that's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to center our stock. But look right here how the stock's not centered to the die. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my eyelet here where I think it needs to be. I need to move my stock about probably 2 inches to the gear side or the drive side of the press. So it's pretty close to that right now. I'm going to go to automatic. It adjusts my web over. I'm also going to move my roll itself over to help so it don't take so much strain on the web guide. And now what I want to do to make sure that I've got my spot marked is I want to mark on my stock right here. Now what I want to do is I want to mark my stock so that when I jog it through, I don't use no more stock than I need to center that to the die. When that black mark comes through, then I know that the stock should be as centered as it's going to be to the die. All right, I go to idle. Now I'm going to kick it in, run. Now I'm just going to watch for it to come. You can just kind of follow me with it. I'm just watching for my mark to come through the press. Here it comes. That way I only use 1 revolution of stock to get through the press. Okay, now it's come through. I see my mark. My stock's very centered in the press. Now I'm ready to check and make sure that my die is going to cut. I'm going to do this. I never want to apply pressure unless I've got the press moving. I'm going to come down till it gets quiet. That usually indicates that it's cutting. Once it runs down and comes through a little bit, I'm going to check it. All I want to do is pull a couple of labels. That die is 2 around, so I need to make sure that I got 2 revolutions around of it cutting. It's designed to only cut the face of the stock. It shouldn't cut into the liner. When we get set up, we'll take a marker, rub it on the back of the liner. If it's coming through, then it's cutting too deep. Right now, it looks pretty good. So what I'm ready to do now is I'm ready to set my underscores. I'm going to set my underscore. My underscore is designed to cut my carrier width. My carrier width is the final width of the stock. Usually I have a 1/16 or 1/8 inch of liner that exceeds outside the die cut of the label. That is the carrier width, is the width of the liner. What I want to do is I'm going to pull me a couple of images. Oh, this is a pretty long label. 1 image is going to be pretty good, but I'm going to pull a couple of images off my web before it gets to the underscore. My underscore is just going to cut the liner. So once I pull a couple of repeats off, I can now pull my underscore, let it run, and I can see exactly where I want to put my underscores at just by looking at it. So it takes a lot to guess out. Once you practice it a little bit, you get faster and easier at it too. Now, the key thing about the underscore is that there's two settings. One locks it. These move back and forth. One setting is designed to lock it in place. You got to lock it in place before you set the spring mechanism that puts the pressure on the blade. If you just set the spring and don't lock it, you're going to wear out your blades and cut through your stock. So make sure it don't move before you engage the blade. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get down here and line it up. Here again, pressman friendly. I can see right in here. I can move it over. That looks real good. And let me see. That looks real good. All right, I'm happy with that. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to visibly look and see when my blade touches. And then I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to go to idle. And I'm going to set this while it's running. I put my finger right here. And I'll see my blade start turning. I'm cutting all the way through. I want to back off. Now I'm not cutting through. Now, there we go. Same thing over here. I want to go till I cut all the way through. Now I back off. A little bit more. All right, now then, I'm dead on. Now I shouldn't have no problem. I should be able to pull this. It should be cut fine. That should be cut fine. See how even? See it's not cut through. My ladder's going to pull no problem. Simple, simple, simple. Now then, if I cut too deep, these little things here are going to want to stay down in there. So it's important that I don't cut too deep. Now that I've got this set, I'm real comfortable it's going to work fine. So I don't want to worry about fighting this ladder when I'm running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this, and I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to take a label or a piece of a label off, and I'm just going to tape all this back down. The reason I do that is so that I can go on with other parts of my setup, and I ain't worried about that wrapping around these rolls when it goes through. So I'll run that through. Let that all get clear. All right, now then, I'm ready for my next part of converting, which is going to be laminating. All right, this product's going to be laminated, so we're going to show you how to laminate. First thing you got to do is have a rubber laminating roll. You need to center this up in your press so that it don't have any slack. It needs to be pretty tight. It don't have to be as tight as a die. Also, make sure your oil holes are facing up, because if it's in there for long runs, you want to oil this just like anything else. Simply 2 square blocks. Make it where it's loose enough to where it'll slide in pretty easily if you got it even. That's all you do. Next thing you do is you have a special pressure mount. This is designed so that when you screw the pressure hold downs down, they hit dead on top of the blocks, as to where these are designed to hit on top of the pressure bearings. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an extra block on each side so I don't have to screw it down so far.